per MSW ton, and next year it's going to be, it could go up as
in progress.
All right, guys, we're going to get started in, sorry, just a second. All right. The time is 7:01, so we'll get started with tonight's budget workshop. Before we begin, I do want to mention that there will be a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night at 6:45 before budget deliberations continue, and that is on the Mira recycling contract. Again, it's back. So, so we can begin tonight with budget deliberations. This is where the selectmen have had the budget. It's been presented to them. They have the numbers, and I'm entertaining changes and what you would all like to see tonight regarding this year's fiscal year 2023 proposed budget. Would you like to start at the beginning, or is there anywhere in particular that you'd like to go first?
Ryan, I guess I'll start with my notes here. So, all right, well, always budget season's hard. No one's ever happy at the end of the day because they feel like they got slighted or numbers have been cut. But this is what we're here for, is to try to make us fiscally responsible as a town. So last couple of years have been very trying for the people of Portland, and with COVID, a lot of people have lost their jobs or had to take furloughs or what was a good day? And just money's been tight for a lot of people, and since I've been on the board for the past 2 years, water sewer rates have increased. Every year the budget has increased a little bit. The recycling center rates have gone up. It's a vicious cycle, and it's tough for a lot of people. And now with inflation, gas prices, so this is especially tough year because we're trying to do what's right, but there's still people out there that are hurting for work and money, and it's tough. And I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off, and what I found is I think on the Board of Education side, I'd like to see a $50,000 decrease in their budget. And on the general government side, out of capital, I'll entertain any kind of capital decrease of between $100,000 and $150,000 if the fellow selectmen could help me out.
How does well, let's start.
We could start with the Board of Ed, 'cause
Yeah.
that was just a simple number I put out there. I don't know.
Charles, is that, do any of the selectmen have any comments on that? Is that something that, is there an agreement on that, or is that some?
I'll say I'm not concurring either way with the dollar amounts, but I will say that throughout campaign season, what I heard from an awful lot of people is this is tough times. And I think we need to do, you go in to buy a car, you're not gonna buy the car for the price they give you. I think we really need to look closely at this and keep this in mind. You know, we have folks, homeowners in town, and we just had the reevaluation, we're what, 11% increase? You know, I agree, these are tough times. A lot of people are still kind of rocking and reeling from COVID. So I think it's incumbent upon us just to look and see if there is any give in this budget.
Now, I do want to just highlight, the grand list revaluation was not an 11% increase to the taxpayers. That just means that the grand list grew by 11%. So, but you are right. I mean, it is a tough time for many people, and we need to be aware of that. Do any of the other selectmen feel similarly on this?
I think this is a good place to start a conversation. I agree with Mike Hernandez and John. We have to, I think everybody's got to give a little. Where we take that money from, I'm not exactly sure. I've looked at capital a little. I think there's some things in there we can maybe put off for the time being. And also, I'd like to work with the Board of Ed and see where they can help the town out, see what we can come up with them.
Bobby?
I agree with all three of them. I mean, it's not an excessive budget, but I think there are some places that with small amounts, it'll equal what Mike was talking about. And we should be able to come up with that.
I just a couple thoughts. So this is, I think, the fourth time that I've gone through the budget process, and one of the things I've noticed, every one, is there's not a lot of fluff in there, right? We've gone through, and the budgets are done on the Board of Ed side as well as our side, with an awareness that taxpayers in town are aware of every penny, they pay attention to this kind of thing. So there's never fluff in there. We never have an easy $100,000, $200,000 in there. There's always nickels and dimes from here, small savings here, maybe we saved on a lease. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know that go in there. So the number you said, 50,000, for example, you know, whatever the number is, there's probably some money that can be done. I trust that they know, the Board of Ed side knows where they can shave or where they might be able to do some things to kind of save money, as we know on our side of the budget what to do. But I just know there's not a whole bunch of money, but we have to be aware of how tough it is for people out there. I get that. That is important. And it may be, you know, we may find 1,000 little nickels here and there that add up and stuff, which is why these deliberations are important. So I've had a chance to look through the budget as completely as I can over the last couple of weeks and really, you know, kind of dive into the numbers. And there's not a lot of changes from last week. The numbers that Tom presented are good. They're solid. The increases are realistic based on things we can't control, like the oil changes and the oil prices. But what I will say, though, is as we're starting this, all of us are looking at every single nickel we can, but I will be deferring the actual budget cuts on the Board of Ed side to what they think. So we may come up with a number, but there'll be a dialogue back and forth between us as to what makes the most sense as we try to come to the best number. But like I said, there's not a whole bunch of numbers, a whole bunch of extra money in the budget, because we put it together with the idea that we're trying to keep it nice and close. You know, we're not throwing a lot of extravagant stuff in there. So, and we're all aware of that up here. So.
Yeah.
Now we got the hard work.
And I would note that, you know, in those 4 years when there have been cuts, it's because we've creatively shifted things. I know one year we shifted when we started payments on the bonding a year, because we were close to it, and it was enough to change a significant amount of money in terms of taxes. So we were fortunate to have that. I just don't know if you're going to see that in this particular budget, because like you said, I mean, this is the, fourth or fifth time through this now for me, and, there is no fluff. There
No.
certainly is none of that. So what you're doing is when you look at some of the organization, the departments are getting 2.5%. I mean, my worry is that we're going off of numbers that we feel comfortable, we might be safe with, but we don't know based on what's going on with the oil situation. That could blow those numbers out of the water.
Right.
We're going off of, and I'm sure Tom did his best to try to figure out a number that's in the middle to be safe with. But again, we're in a period of very big disruption to the whole energy industry. So it's dangerous when you start saying you want to cut 2.5%. I mean, that's where you start looking at those type of things. Well, if we take a little and, guesstimate that we think we could take it out of here. Inflation's 7%. Seems like it's still 7%, so I don't know when it's going down. They're predicting it's going to be 3.5% or something this year, but it's not that right now. So.
Agreed. Charles, I guess if you'd like, would you like to come up and can we just ask you if, what would $50,000, what would a $50,000 reduction look like? Do you have an idea of that?
I can, again, Stephanie's here. I'm just hearing the number now. I would suggest that maybe 40 would be a better number, and I understand what you're trying to accomplish, right? But I think, like Ralph said, we are all very concerned about how the effect, particularly of fuel, which drives everything, is going to impact us next year, right? Certainly, $50,000 isn't going to put us in a position where we're talking about layoffs or anything. Much more than that, I would be concerned. But, and Stephanie will tell you, we're very, very, very aware of diesel and heating, and if we get a cold winter and, this thing in Ukraine gets worse, we may be back to you saying we need more, right? And do I think 50 is a reasonable number? I do. Would I like to see it be 40? Certainly, I think we could move forward with that, but, again, it's just the uncertainty that we're dealing with right now with, again, supply chains and world events. It's just unsettling.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Mike, is there?
I don't know how this works now, but do we ask them to come back tomorrow with a number between 40 and 50 that they've worked out?
I mean, you could, right, I mean, you could say, if 40 is reasonable, which you did propose 50, is 40 something that would be, it sounds like the board would, be willing, to work with that. So maybe we can revisit that, or
we can.
40.
Everyone knows it's on the table right now. I said 50, what do you guys say? So
Yeah, let's open it up, yeah.
I was saying 50, you guys got any numbers throughout there?
So I would, again, defer to Dr. Britton and just see if he, you may be able to find 50. That's just a number that we threw out. But you may, relook at that and find there's some things that can be delayed, deferred, whatever. And if it's more, if it's less, but we don't want to mess up.
Tom?
The Board of Selectmen comes up with, recommends a number per se, and then the Board of Ed has a number, and go back and meet with their board at times. So the Board of Selectmen doesn't have line item jurisdiction over the Board of Ed.
That's a good point, yeah.
You can make your recommendations, but they would obviously have to have time to go back and, so you make the judgment call based on, input from Dr. Britton now, and then, the numbers, we take the number to be, and they have to go and determine those numbers after that.
That's a good point. So what Tom was saying was that, the Board of Selectmen, we do not have jurisdiction over the line items of the Board of Education budget. But certainly, if Dr. Britton is saying that a $40,000 reduction is doable for the Board of Ed, maybe we should entertain that, a thought. It's up to the Board of Selectmen.
So I have a suggestion also that kind of encompasses both. let's say it's $40,000 or $50,000 on the Board of Ed side. Since they're 2/3 of the budget, I think what we could do on the general government side is do kind of an equivalent amount and make that kind of what we're trying to find. So if it's 40 or 50 from your end, we should be able, since we're 1/3 of the budget, come up with maybe 20 to 30 or 20 to 35 in that range. And then, have that be kind of the goal, at least we try to get to. If we can get to there easily, we might be able to find a little bit more, but that way it gives us at least a combined of maybe 80 or 90,000 we're trying to pull off of both budgets. So that could be kind of the starting point for these deliberations. And you guys kind of work at your end, and, we regroup at the next opportune time. You have to call a meeting at your end as well. So I'm not sure when you could do that, but that might be a good thing, and we can work at our end and then come together.
Ryan,
We're not talking a lot of
what is-
money percentage-wise.
What is our timeline here?
So the budget has to be approved by April 6th. So we have deliberations tonight, we have deliberations tomorrow, and then if we need to, we can add more deliberations, but the schedule would be that we would have the budget hopefully wrapped up by tomorrow, and then we would be able to adopt it on April 6th.
That was why I asked the question, because I'm wondering realistically, what Dr. Britton's turnaround would be to go back and work some numbers.
Well, we do that pretty quickly. I do have to, of course, share it with the full board, and, Tom said they would need to, amend the budget. So we do have a board meeting next Tuesday.
The fifth.
Right, so, I think we would be able to, if April 6th is the deadline, I think that, if that's the.
Right, I mean, so I think if April 6th is when you said that you need to have
April
this done.
6th,
We
yes.
would be meeting next Tuesday. Stephanie would have to go back and, revise the numbers and then bring it to the full board on Tuesday night. But we would be able to get it done by the 6th, I think. Right, Stephanie, am I missing something there?
So if we were asking you as a board to get us in the ballpark, 40 to 50,000, you can come back with a number between there for us?
Yep.
And we're not gonna be, hold you to 50, hold you to 40, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, we would, Stephanie, I would just need to go back tomorrow.
No, we would give them a number, and then they would make that work.
Oh, it has to be an exact number?
We would
Then
reduce.
45,000, how about right in the middle? Is that good? Does everyone agree to that, or no?
I think that's where you guys.
Yeah, that's.
Okay,
yeah.
I say 45. Anyone else, different number?
If I hear 46, if I hear 44.
No, I think if we have to give them a number, that's a number to shoot at, I guess. 45?
Is there consensus on that number?
I'd say yes. Right?
I'm good with that.
Yeah. The good news, it's 0.00218% of your budget. So it's, percentage-wise, it's small, but I know finding real dollars. All right. At our end, I think we should be looking for at least 30,000 on our side to keep it in proportion to theirs. So it's a small decrease, but maybe that's what we shoot for. And if we can find more, we find more.
I agree with you.
Ralph? John?
I'll admit, I'm at that 45, I'm struggling a little bit, only because, I have a lot of teachers in the family, and I have a great respect for what these folks have gone through COVID, and what our children have gone through, and how they kept our kids safe. I heard Dr. Britton's presentation, and I agree with that 150%. Everybody in this room, I understand what they need and why they need it. And I think we're all saying the same thing. I mean, we understand that we need everything that's in there, but we wouldn't be doing our due diligence for the residents of Portland if we didn't try to knock it down a little bit. And I don't know if 45 is a number, but I would definitely ask the Board of Education to come back with a reasonable number.
What? I think Dr. Britton did say 40.
He said 40. Honestly, I would lean more towards 40.
You have to give them an exact number to come to.
Well, that's why I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Tom, right?
Generally, we provide.
Speak at the podium, Tom. We've got complaints on it, that nobody can hear.
So as the Board of Selectmen goes through the deliberations, they, generally work that out and come up with a figure. that they would like to have the cut to be. Like in this instance, you brought that up. Dr. Britton was able to provide an explanation of why he thought another number was the number. And then you have discussions, you come up with the number that you're recommending, and then that's the number that's recommended. And then the Board of Education has, time throughout the process to come up with that, work with their board and to go. But so it's, the answer is you come up with the agreed upon number amongst yourselves that you think that works well with the input from the departments, and that was the number. Then they have their time to go and work on that. But usually you pick a number that you feel is reasonable with your discussions with the rebuttal from the superintendent, and then you have a consensus of the number, and that's the number we drop in. And it just goes, for us, it goes as a line item reduction. Like currently there was a reduction from before by the first selectman, and then this would now be considered a reduction by the Board of Selectmen.
I have one other suggestion too. As you go back and look at that, if your board looks at it and says, we don't have 40, we don't have, whatever the number is, we can prioritize some of these things, but be aware that if you cut this 10,000, there will be, so as long as you let us know what the ramifications are, beyond 30 or 40,000. Again, we want to be reasonable as well, so I share the whole board as well, but, look at that and let us know, and then we can kind of go from there, I guess.
So it's to the Board of Selectmen. We can come back to this. I mean, but I think the question is, at this point, I think everyone is, willing to consider a reduction of 40 to 45,000. I think that's where we're at. I think some feel 40,000. I think some feel 45,000, if I'm reading this right. So I guess what I would ask is for, maybe if we could just take a vote on who, and see where we're at. So Mike is at 45,000.
Correct.
And John is at 40,000.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go off of the belief that Charles spent some time already thinking about this, and if he feels comfortable 40, then I'm gonna lean towards 40 for the time being, because we have to talk about what number we're gonna look for from the town, but I would say 40 for me.
And I'll say, I'm gonna go with 40 as well on this, but it's up to.
I had a different number, but which was in between, but I have to go with 40.
I'm at 45.
Yeah, I'm fine with 40.
All right, so we will ask for a $40,000 reduction. Right. Thank you. And we can move on to the general side. Is there a place to start? Where would you like to start at the beginning?
I think that's typically what we've done, is we've gone, unless they want to attack us some other way. I mean, we go section by section. Is there anything on this particular section that anyone has questions about or would like to change? I think that's the easiest way to approach it.
So what page you were starting on?
19 would be the Board of Selectmen.
So we're assuming we're not making any changes in revenue.
Well, you can take a look at revenue.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any changes in revenue?
I will tell you that Tom and I have gone over the revenue line items. We've spent a lot of time on them. I believe they're an accurate reflection of where we are at with the budget. I would not advise.
I have no changes in revenue.
Okay.
I was just asking if anybody else does. By the way. It does come before 19, page 5. Gotta have a little excitement during these things, they get boring.
So, the Board of Selectmen budget, you guys tell me, but it's pretty cut and dry. It's a 0% increase. The next page, the first Selectmen budget is a 1.56% reduction, decrease.
I mean, it's payroll and probably things we should be part of and participating in, so I don't think there's anything that really sticks in my mind.
That's pretty much committee fees.
Yep. Ethics Commission is 0% increase.
Small amount too.
Probate court is contractual. It's a 0.15% increase.
No control of names.
Are we on to elections now?
Yep.
I had, one question on here was the voter canvassing
Mm-hmm.
for 2250.
Mm-hmm.
What do they exactly do for that?
So the canvass takes place once a year, I believe, after, I think it's January or February, and the registrar of voters do a voter canvass to residents in town, especially the ones that haven't voted in a period of time, to make sure that they still reside at that house, and so that is the payment for doing that process.
Is there a reason that it went up, I don't know, 50%?
It didn't go up 50%. It stayed, it's
From 20 to 21, it went up 50%.
20 to, you mean
Previous year.
Yeah.
the previous year? So that was what was actually expended, and so what was budgeted, so what you're looking at, if you look at fiscal year '22, which is last year, that's 2250 that's budgeted, and then the actual expended, that's fiscal year '21. So there is a difference there. It didn't go up, it's just.
I understand that, but I'm saying if they only spent 1,400 twice, why are they asking for 2,250? I mean, it's not a huge number, I'm just,
No, I mean, it's
Asking.
But
a,
every penny counts.
every
Yeah.
penny. Tom, do you want to tackle that as far
I
as
mean, is it a
why?
postage thing, is it, there's not that
Well-
many more residents?
It's a time thing, and so you have two registrars, and depending on the year, you budget it, but you don't know exactly how much time it's going to take to complete that. So you wanna build in more monies than you think you might need. You don't wanna under budget. So that's where that comes from. If you wanna take 250 off, maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't.
I mean, future, per past year, it was during the pandemic-driven years, so there's a possibility there would be more hours that would be needed when, they're able to do some more activities. It does fluctuate based on the level, based on the person doing it, based on the amount of time. So that's what, so I think the 2,250 has been the number for many years, and sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't hit it.
So, and Tom touched on a good point, because one of the things that makes this budget a little more difficult than in years past is that when you look at actual expended for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, you have to remember that those were pandemic years. And so oftentimes, like you'll notice, if you look at conferences, meetings, and dues, in fiscal year 2020, it was so low because
there was no conferences.
There was no conferences. So that's why if you look at that, there's a big increase. But really, it's just getting back to the status quo. It's not a big increase.
Well, it's funny you talk about conferences. That's the line I was gonna look to next. Are there any non-mandatory conferences, or is everything listed there required.
I think we, you know, if you wanted to take out maybe 500, I think, I don't know, I think that might be a number that you could reduce that by.
Going back to the the canvassing, it's unfortunate because they haven't done it yet this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the March budget report, it shows 100% available. So we can't gauge how long it'll take because they haven't done it yet this year, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Or they, I believe they've done their canvassing. I don't know if it's, the accounting has been.
Right. So they have done it, so we just don't know. What
We
it
don't
is.
know the cost.
Oh, is it May or June? Okay, excuse me.
All right, so we really can't adjust that number until we know what they do
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
And then for the meetings, if you think $500 would work, that's fine.
Well, and, you know, 500 here, 500 there, if we can get a few of these small numbers,
Mhm.
they'll add up.
Okay. So we can reduce line item 32,000, which is conferences, meetings, and dues, from 2,500 to $2,000. And I do want to point out that the percentage increase, it's a 9.93% increase. It is a smaller budget. Elections is $41,500, or $41,000 would be the new proposed budget. And the reason for the big increase is that we have a gubernatorial election this year. And so typically, every year, in municipal years, the elections goes down, and in federal years, the budget goes up. So that's what you're seeing here, is a reflection on that.
And worth giving it a shot and see where we end up.
Okay. Are we good with that, then?
Okay. Brian, excuse me, could I ask Tom a question too before we dive in? Tom? Tom? I have a question for you. So, I see his feet.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the weeds on all of this stuff right here, you've seen the total budgets proposed to actual and used over the last number of years. In your professional opinion, are there any unknowns in the next year or so that will most likely be favorable for us? For example, refunds from KERMA, or other rebates that we should be looking at. I mean, we're going to be looking at small dollar amounts here, but one, $30,000 rebate from KERMA, or one unexpected reduction in cost could make a big difference. So are there any things on the overall budget that you feel will be on the plus side for the budget, meaning that we will save some money?
Tom,
Offhand.
Can you come up to the podium, though, Tom, please? What?
So before we go into a lot of the little things or whatever, are there some big things that we should be looking at and concentrating based on your experience with budgets
Yep.
and how much we had extra in different departments? Help guide us.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few, revenue-wise, we said we're doing everything at the current mill rate. When we get to the point of the adoption of the actual mill rate in the May-ish timeframe, we'll hopefully have the adjusted BAA, which will be a little lower, which will probably cause a slight increase, or some increase to the actual mill rate. So again, we're going expenditure-driven right now, and trying to determine, are we at the appropriate level of expenditures with the potential estimated revenue? So when we looked at our direct revenues, I believe we had an increase in our direct revenues this year, or it was a very slight change. We were actually up 5,958 in our direct revenue, so that's a nice plus. If this doesn't have into effect if they do cap the mill rate, so that for car taxes, so we would have to look into that. We budgeted through miscellaneous. That would be if KERMA does give a rebate, which sometimes they do. They'll give you a rebate. So we budgeted with $20,000. We don't know what it would be.
Right.
And often theirs is driven off of investment return, which this year would not be as positive as it had once was, okay? Because interest rates are low, and some of that is based off of, the reserves, the reserve funds. They're not heavily, they're invested, properly, but it's, there's a possibility there of not returning as much as you'd like. We had the sale of the town property was this year, so that was there. Expenditure-wise, we had a drop, the biggest thing on the general fund was the drop of the debt for the refunding was half of that debt fell off. So in this instance, in this budget here, that was why expenditures rose in the capital side to try to offset that. If I've heard something of a larger number of reduction in capital, I mean, that would, in the general fund, that would have that would have a major impact in the decrease to the general fund, to the general fund's kind of side of the budget. It would still go up, but it would lower the impact of our budget. It's a big, decent sized number. So 100,000 is a decent number. So I mean, those would change. We have areas where there's unknowns is the insurance area, and that's from various types of insurance, such as excess liability, cyber, those type of things. They're higher dollar values than they were this year, that's an area of hit. Obviously, diesel. The intent throughout this was a $3 a gallon. For gas and diesel, we're above that. We're above that number. So, hopefully it'll come back down. But with the continued issues that we have, it's troubling. So that was in this scheme. There was a few other areas of in the transfer side. We were trying to in Parks and Rec. They had 37 of possible ARPA money, which may or may not be used this year, which then could cause possibly a result of additional general fund monies this year going there. But that would be, that was a $37,000 additional transfer. And youth had a one-time use of fund balance. We did half of that for this year, so second time use, but halfway. So those had a component. There was some changes in people, they got married or not married, so therefore it changes some of the dollar value of the other funds where there might have been needed more funds to be there. So the long and short of it is, I mean, if you're trying to make a bigger scale impact, obviously there's the reduction in capital will reduce some, continually building your increase in operations off of debt. But those are the areas. I mean, I'm not sure if Selectman Curley has any other areas that he wanted to reduce additionally or not. But I mean, usually, it's I don't have any like shining bullets to say, oh, this is going to happen, or this will occur, because right now, since we put this together, prices continue to go up. So we people put in budgets much higher than this, and we reduce to get to an area that we thought we could do. So I mean, I'm sure there's a few dollars here and there, but I mean, I don't have a certain area. I mean, obviously, we take around 100 or so from capital, it's going to have a decent effect on the general.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all.
Tom, I got one question while you're standing.
Sure.
For the bank fees, why was there such a large jump the last couple of years?
So bank fees,
What page
again,
are you on?
for
For everyone?
29.
29. Thanks.
So bank fees are, times are good, life is grand, interest rates are high. You don't necessarily have an expense of a fee. Everything is done based on, it's like fees are within the calculation of interest. So when rates are higher, you get a better interest rate. And then there's the fees are within that calculation. What would occur, generally the fees that were there were, you're buying deposit tickets, check stock, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What, in this fiscal year, in July, we talked about in the report, that in July, we run Lockbox. Lockbox is, a service where the amounts come in for taxation, they come into the town, the TD Bank comes and picks them up to the courier, they bring them to their center, and they enter those activities to get the cash in faster, and it's just it's a service that you provide in July. We don't do it in January, the collector has to do all the work in January, but it's just, there's so much influx. It's a way to get the money in, get it processed.
Okay.
So that's what we do. This year, because the interest rates were hard, the earnings credit, it continually goes down, which is what creates the amount of balance that makes it work, right? So the earnings credit goes down, your required balance goes up. So if in a month, in a month like that, it may make the balance be maybe $7 to $8 million. In July, we don't have that, and our fund balance isn't $8 million. So in that month, we lost. So generally, we win. In that month, we lost. That month was like about I can't remember the number off the top of my head. Whatever the number was, we lost that. That was above. So I was thinking that if interest rates stay as they are, it's going to be hard for us to win in July. It's almost impossible to win in July. So therefore, I was budgeting for that increase again for July.
Okay.
So that's what July was. Okay.
Yep. So we're on the finance department now.
So hopefully if interest rates rise, then you don't have that. And that's the goal, is to have it to be minimal.
Well, the Feds are talking about 2 or 3 bumps this year, so.
But you gotta see that in the, you gotta see it by the banks too, So sometimes it'll go up, but it'll go up. We've seen a tick or two, that we've seen some movement. But I mean, even on interest, we might see 0.1.
Right.
0.11. I mean, it's quite low. When we were talking a year or two ago, you're in 1 plus, and that's a lot of points. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
So, does anyone have any changes on page 29, finance department?
I do not.
No.
Collector of revenue, page 31.
Wait, hang on.
Oh,
Hang on. I'll take, in my line of work, working for the state, every time the budget is problematic, the first thing that goes away is conferences. They say that's a nice to have. And I think I'll ask the same question with every page we get to, where there's conferences, where there's an increase. And what are these required, or are these nice to haves? I'm looking at finance department conferences. 1920 was 1,297, 2021 was 1,299, 21-22 was $4,000, and it's $4,000 carried over proposed for this budget.
so, yeah, but remember, what we were saying before was that in 2020 and 2021.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Conferences didn't
Yeah.
happen, although
Yeah.
I know conferences were still, many of the conferences were done video at a reduced rate. But I'm just looking for those things where we might have a nice to have instead of a need to have.
I did, Tom, do you want to, this is your conference, do you want to speak to it, or?
Sorry, Tom. And I'm looking at, quite honestly, the same line in every department. I'm just looking to see if there's any savings there.
Okay.
So what is your direct question, please?
Do you need $4,000?
Do you need
for
$4,000 for conferences and meetings? Is there any flexibility in there? Is that, those mandatory conferences and dues? If they are, that answers my question. I'm proposing.
So the budget has in it dues for me to go to meetings.
Mhm.
Based on my workload, I'm generally here working, and haven't had an opportunity to partake in these great meetings. They're CPE conferences. So the CPE that I usually do is I do a lot of self-study. So that's where those dollars are for, is for me to attend conferences, and my staff to attend conferences. So the staff haven't been able to attend any of the conferences in the past 2 years due to that. I mean, if it's gonna make a difference, you wanna take 500?
Again, I'm just asking the question. As I'm going through, I did notice in a few different departments, the conference line was increased. And I'm just looking to see if there's any, if that's a possibility to collect some.
But you're saying they're increased, they're not increased. Every line you guys, you've said is not increased, they're the same. there's zero increase, it's just that it's passed to the actual. The actual.
Right,
Has
right.
been, I mean, last year, there were none, there was no conferences, the year before, there was hardly any.
So then if there were no, and I hate to use the example, but there was $1,200 spent for conferences expended in 1920 and similar amount in 2021.
So
And-
that's, what?
And $4,000 in 21-22. And if that was the case, 21-22 was still in the COVID era.
All right, so that, the category is conference meetings and dues. So dues could be anything of memberships, licensure.
And that's why I
licenses.
asked the question, because I understand dues and memberships, that's a cost that you have to spend no matter what. I understand that. The only reason, again, getting back to my question, the only thing I asked was, are any of these conferences unnecessary or nice to haves? If the answer is no, then my question's off the table. I'm looking to see if there's any ability to reach any kind of a savings in that line, that's all.
So, I said, if you'd like
Ron,
to take the
do you wanna-
$500.
I can tell you for police, you're gonna see an increase. A lot of our,
Yeah, can you go to the mic, please? Thank you.
for the police department, a lot of the training classes used to be free. The academy, sorry. The academy used to give you free training.
I know they don't anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
So the increase there is based on the expense now to put a person through training. It's no longer free. And they're big the classes are minimal $400 or $500,
Right.
some of these classes. So that's why you'll see on the police line item, when you look back a year or two ago, the number is half of what it is today, based on the academy stopped
Yeah.
doing free classes. So that, I can
No,
speak for-
yeah, and I understand. I'm only posing the question, looking for
Yeah.
something, but,
Yeah, okay.
okay. All right, Tom, I'm good. I'll take it off the table.
So, we're good with we'll move on?
I'll pass on that. If a lot of that is dues and meetings and things, I understand that.
Okay. It is the same, what is budgeted in this fiscal year is the same that was budgeted in the previous fiscal year. So there is no change to that line item. Next is collector of revenue. Nothing, the only change is in payroll here.
Good.
Okay. Page 33, assessor. Any comments? No?
I had the same question, but based upon the response, I'll be good with this too.
But, John, with this one right now, they're currently at $157 this year. This is one of those things that you were saying that it adds up. If you could take 250 or 500 from
Right.
each of them, you're talking, $4,000 or $5,000 by the time you're done.
So just so you know, on the Board of Assessment, that's where the Board of Assessment Appeals conferences are as well. And then if there's training like at UConn where they have to do for the testing, I'm pretty sure the UConn didn't occur last year and hasn't probably yet. So those are the areas.
And I noticed that assessment appeals didn't have anything there, so that explains where this is.
That's where so there's the Board of Assessment Appeals, if they do have training, it goes to that
Yeah.
budget.
And I'll say I went to that training, so I understand.
Finally, that's not
Yeah.
intuitive that that would
Yeah.
be there.
Okay.
You want it? You're good with that?
I mean, it's up to you guys. I'm just looking for pennies, so.
No, I get it. We all are.
If we're not happy at the end, we can come back to it.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Board of Assessment Appeals?
That was 11% cut there. I think we're okay.
Let me see,
Here we go, leave that one alone.
All right. Town Council, page 37.
That's one of those things that we don't know if it's gonna be low or high. It depends what goes on with the town.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So I don't think we should touch that.
Yeah, wouldn't either. got too many things going on.
And you can see the fluctuation from what we actually expended in 2020 to what we spent in 2021.
Yeah.
So, all right, town clerk, page 39.
I don't see anything on there, I have no questions on that.
Central services, page 41. I will say on this, I did speak with our finance director earlier today, and I would, we've been really trying to do a little push for more digital email and less postage. So I did propose we could lower the postage by $500 to 16,000, if everyone's okay with that.
Take it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have. So we can move on to 43 is technology. Now, just so everyone's aware, the big increase is in part-time payroll, and that is due to the police accountability bill. We have to have a additional staff to handle, and Ron would be able to speak to this, to handle the data from the police body cameras. And that's going to be effective July 1. So that's where you're seeing the increase in this budget.
And I'll say, I've spoken at this at previous meetings. I understand exactly, I deal with it in my job, what the Police Accountability Act requires. And this body camera and storage of data is an expensive proposition for everybody, all the municipalities, state government, everybody. But I also know that where this can become more costly, and that's why I see this amount being appropriate, is if at any point in time, any action by the police department has a freedom of information request, that whole recording has to be edited for any confidential information. And that's, I would think that's an expensive proposition too, so I understand.
So is we okay to move on?
Actually, not yet, just, so on the gas and diesel fuel, we're gonna run into this or whatever. It's the same as last year, right? And we know already for a fact that it's up to 5+ or whatever. Are we gonna run into that in every single line item here with gas and that's gonna require that we really, do we need to adjust that to compensate for what, we know is the reality?
Most gas and diesels have been adjusted. This one, I'm not sure why this one is the same as last year, but if you look at
In
what's,
years past,
in years past,
They don't even
I
post.
think we're
Right.
okay with it. It's not a big dollar amount.
No, I know, but because
So-
the first of others will see that.
But
that's
every,
why.
the big ones have all been adjusted upward to reflect
Right.
the increase in cost.
Gotcha. And I'll just ask anyways, the overtime is lower this year, 13,002, than it has been the last couple of years or so. Does adding someone on the part-time payroll, does that allow extra work to be done? Would it be better, for example, this part-time person to do some additional work to help reduce overtime?
Well, one of the reasons for the overtime is that we have a position open right now for a technology assistant. And so, once that position is filled, you would expect to see the need for overtime to diminish. So, so that's where that would come in. But overtime is budgeted the same. There is no increase in this fiscal year from
Right.
last fiscal year.
Do I understand? Right.
You good?
Yeah, it's for now.
Okay. Fire Department, page 45. I did speak with both Tom and Bob earlier. We can reduce gas and diesel here. It did go up, but we can reduce it 1,000 if everyone's okay
Down to 7?
to 7,000.
Okay.
51001 line?
Yes. Mhm. John, you had some-
Yeah, just a couple things, give me a second. Yeah, I have a couple questions for Bob. One of them is the increase of the annual stipend from the 1,600 to the 1,800.
Correct.
Is that in lieu of us trying to go with a pay per shift for our medical and our duty officers?
So, yes, there were two options that we had there. One was the increase the stipend, which our plan rewards those based on the stipulations of the stipend for the 10% plus the OSHA mandatories and the miscellaneous stuff that's currently in that plan. What we were looking to do is, based on the need to engage our members to respond, especially at night, 2 in the morning, no matter what that call may be, even as simple as a lift assist. We have officers that are on duty from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We also are trying to engage our EMS staff, which is the most important, especially for those types of calls, to be part of that on-call. It's all volunteer now. The officers have a requirement to do that, to be an officer, and we're pretty strict. If you're voted into that position, that's your obligation, and you have to take a duty night to fill those nights. So we have at least one individual that's on call who can do very little alone. Unfortunately, a lot of our officers are handling a lot of medical calls and miscellaneous calls alone. So what we're trying to do with the reduction in volunteerism across the nation by over 5%, here in town, we're lucky, maybe 2% a year, we're trying to engage those somehow with some type of reward, that being either the stipend that is in this budget or what we were looking at as a $25 flat rate for the 12-hour shift for both EMS and the officer. So it'd be 2 people, so it's $50, 365 days a year. It ended up being the same amount of money. The difference is it's between the stipend and those that are actually doing that work. The stipend gets paid based on activity, so you have a chance to gain that money based on the activity. What we discussed, which is difficult to move into overnight because we have to have a structure in place to do that, to make sure that those hours are time card or, they're guaranteed that those people are working. And that has to go to finance, and then how we're going to pay that out, if it's going to be monthly, quarterly. It's a process. So we had a long discussion over that. But that plan, we're going to have to get there someday. We're absolutely going to have to get there someday. You're either going to lose them or you're going to have to start paying them. You're losing them now. I've been doing this for 19 years. I haven't seen a reduction in staff like we have now. We're lucky to be getting a few volunteers, but it's not like it was. And our business is getting much more dangerous. COVID did not help that. We've lost a lot of our response because of that. Let's put it frank that families are much more important, and they don't want to bring things back, and they want to remain safe. And we're getting to that. So with that said, we do very well what we have. I'm very proud of the membership that we have, but we're looking, you're right, we talked about that. We're looking to try to, listen, if a guy's going to spend 12 hours once a week, that he's got to go. He's got his radio on for that 12 hours. He's not going out to the bar. He's not going to dinner out of town. He's in town. He's with his family, hopefully, and maybe he doesn't have to go to anything. Maybe he has to go to 10 calls. It's very random. We thought that maybe that $25 would encourage a little more response on that end. And we're looking for that response on our EMS side. which could be any member, but we want to back our fire officer, which is medically trained, but not at the levels that some of the others are, to have that capability to work as a team. And hopefully, that crew would be able to engage others to join a crew that might roll together, so that we can get some apparatus on the road in a timely fashion, and we can have a crew that can work well together rather than onesie-twosies. So yes, the money is there. I think that the stipend is doing the same thing as, it's there. I mean, it's really a transition that we have to get to. Maybe it's too difficult to do it now, so I think the increase in stipend, which is the same dollar amount, rewards those that are doing 10% of the calls, which is over 100 calls a year. And they're 300 hours a year in training. That's mandatory for that stipend too. That's a lot of hours. And then there are additional certifications that they have to hold with OSHA. So.
Our average interior firefighter in town is over the age of 50.
That is correct. Our officers are over 52, which 3 of them are over 63 of age. So our, as you can see, our fire department is getting a little smaller, but it's also getting older, because we don't have that, like say that youth that we used to have when I first started at 14 that's engaging in this type of work. And we're also engaging explorers for a few years, and which is a wonderful thing. They go off to college and they start careers, and it's not here. You know, they move on. Some stay in town, but a lot of those that go to school go to other places, and we lose them. We have them for a few years, and we hope to keep them. So our percentage is less than 10% on retention for explorers that start in the department. Since I've been, you know, it's kind of really dropped over the past 8 or 9 years.
Your experience at talking to different chiefs around the state that had to go paid, some of the towns much smaller than ours.
Yeah.
Do you think we will be able to go to a pay per shift before we go to pay per call? To try to...
Yeah, I think that's the transition that I'm looking at to lighten the blow, that we have to start in steps to see, you know, what that does to encourage our current membership and maybe bring new members in. But I think we have to find a way to reward those that are doing that difficult job, that are taking that 12-hour commitment for that shift per week, to make sure that we're there to respond to our residents' needs. I mean, our protocol has changed since COVID, which has helped us, but we're still up in the 800s and 900s as far as response. But we do 680 to 750 medical calls a year in town. We also have an aging population in our town, and we see that based on the need for our medical response. So there's an awful lot of changes in the business as far as EMS, not only what we're doing, but even more so on our transport services and how those are changing, and Hunters has been purchased, and that whole business is changing, and you know, we're consistently working to make sure that our response times are staying within 3 to 4 minutes to the house, in case those response times for transport from our agencies are delayed. To be perfectly honest with you, I've waited on scene for more than 40 minutes for an ambulance. And thank God we're there to care for our patients. That's really important. That's what we do. We're first responders, and then we pass off care to our transport service, and they move our patients in town to wherever they go. So, you know, usually we're very, very good, but, you know, the whole agency, the whole system, EMS system, is seeing great difficulties, not only in the state but nationally. So it's pretty critical that we're here. So we do, you know, we do a lot, I say, with little. We manage a pretty good budget as far as apparatus and what we're trying to do, but it's all about retention now and how we're going to plan for the future to do that.
Speaking of budget, I was looking at the training number.
Right.
And looking where we are year-to-date now and what we've been spending, do you think there's a little in there we can take away?
Yeah, I think we reduced it a little. That's a hard question because of COVID as well. All the fire academy classes, and even some of the mandatory classes we were able to push and we didn't do training. But I've seen that goes along with membership. If we don't have new members coming in to train, and the members that we have, your average age is 51, we're pretty maxed out on training. I mean, we can continue to go to officer school and stuff, but, that would be a little bit of a waste of money. But, those big numbers that you see in training, the $3,000 to $2,000 class, are those recruit firefighters that we're sending in that are coming in new. They need to learn the skills. They go to school for 7 months. Those are your big numbers. So, we've seen a reduction there. If we have to make a small cut there, we probably can survive based on the numbers that are coming in. The issue will be if we do get an inflow of people that new members that come in, we want to assure that we have money to send them to training. So
would you be comfortable if we took 2,000 from that 18 tonight?
I think we can do that, and then we'll have to see. If over the past year and a half, we haven't seen anything, obviously, we've had very little. And I think that's really because of the situation that we're in right now. The very difficult, we did over 150 calls to positive COVID patients. That's pretty hard to go to those consistently and then go home to your kids and your family and say, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. So I think that has a lot to do with the whole system. Lots of old goats.
I know I did.
Sleep in the garage.
Calls.
Exactly. You did a lot of those.
So is there a consensus on that line then? Is that, we reduce that by $2,000 to go from 18,000 to 16,000?
Yes, if Bob's comfortable with
Bob's
it,
comfortable.
if he says it's okay, yes.
Yeah, there's so many other line items, not only this one, but the other 9 budgets that, I manage. That one gas and diesel fuel line item, you may see the big jump. It affects every other line item. Products, materials, it really doesn't matter where you go in there. Equipment testing, that's going through the roof. These numbers that you have in front of you are less than I think we needed to be at based on the new prices that I'm paying now. Those aren't going to go away. So I'm just, and I think that's for every budget. You're seeing a 4 to 6% increase. Your overall budget contractual was 4%. We reduced your budgets to 2%. So where do we get the 6 back? Where do you get that? The increases that we're going to see in all those line items on equipment and stuff, you're still in that gray area where it's just going to be less. You're just going to be able to do less with the money that's there. That's all. You're going to have to figure it out. Public safety, diesel, fuel. You run my ladder truck for 4 hours, there goes your diesel and fuel line item. That's where you spend your money when you're pumping water. You almost need a fuel truck to come to the scene to fill your trucks. When you drive them, you don't use as much. When you run a pump to fight a fire. So luckily, if we don't have a lot of fires, then that's good. But the minute you have something big, that's when you see the spikes in those line items. That's low. It's going to be up, right? Yeah, our heating fuel, Tom just mentioned, we're a little light on the budget on that too. We're experiencing, just obviously it's the same thing, heating fuel cost. And I think we try to do our best to conserve, and we've made a lot of improvements with updated, in all departments, updated furnaces and the way we're doing things. But I think we've already received those benefits, a few years ago that we put those updated furnaces in and things like that. But
If we take away the 2,000 from training, give you a 700 for fuel, would that help out that line item for fuel? Plus 700? Tom? Right? I don't want to see it go into negative.
he's looking at current. So that's the thing. every day, we're looking at current expenditures, and like you guys were talking about conference and dues, if you go through all my budgets that have conference and dues,
Okay.
there's zero in a short year, and those are all related to, our conference and dues are really training that's required.
Mm.
It's your permitting and your licenses in water and sewer and your flagging and stuff in highway that you have to go get certified to operate in the roads, so those are a little different than the other.
But if you're saying heating's low, let's fix it now.
Heating's low, Mike, I think that's a good,
If everyone's good with 700, we'll just round it up to 18,
So we would, so.
take away
So
2,000.
we'd have a net gain
or-
of 1,300.
Well, plus 1,000 from the
The
gas.
gas
Okay,
and
that's
diesel
still
was
there.
1,000, the training's 2,000, and then we.
you're gonna add 700 to,
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be like minus 2,300.
Okay. And then are we good with this?
Are you guys gonna have a fire banquet this year, or what?
so last year we had a very successful outdoor picnic, which is an awful lot of work, but we're kind of struggling to figure out what we're gonna do. Oh, we're gonna get together.
Yeah,
That's-
I'm not taking any money away. I just
No,
wanna see if
that's
you
a-
guys have it.
We're trying to figure out what we're gonna do. I
Okay.
mean, that's really important, that we just get together and kind of break bread and bring our families, and I like the fact that we were able to invite families. The kids were there, they were able to enjoy that. Our formal banquets are really for us and a guest. I think it's who we leave that's more important. To be perfectly honest with you, I'd rather have everybody that I've left for all the years go to the party, and I'll stay home. And I think probably the entire membership feels that way. We'd rather send those that we leave at Christmas and middle of the night and birthday parties and everything else. Let them go have the party, but we're trying, Mike, to do that. Trying to incorporate something like that, that with the money, we can get that done and just have more families involved. And I think the outdoor party that we had last year was great. So we're gonna try to do that.
Good. You deserve it.
I'm not going back on the bouncy, though, I'll tell you that.
That was a lot of.
Nope.
Sumo wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, and to be fair, the same kudos I gave to the teachers, I give to your guys. Throughout COVID, if it wasn't for the teachers and the firefighters and the police officers, we wouldn't have made it through like we did, so.
Yeah,
Just
thank you.
kudos to those guys.
Yeah, they deserve that. They struggled a lot of, we had a lot of guys get sick through the, but nothing serious, which we were happy with, but it was difficult just to see it, and they were there. We didn't miss a call. And I give them all the respect in the world. PPE was my objective, making the run to keep us safe, and we were able to do that, and the rest of everybody in town as well, so thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bob. We'll move on to 47, Fire Marshal.
He's not here.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, Ray. You're down one.
Does anyone have any changes or?
No, the only thing I see that he hasn't bought a uniform this year, but is he gonna need one next year too, or what? What is that, like a Class A, or what? What does he have? A tuxedo? What's he wearing? I'm not gonna touch his, anything. He's good.
All right.
He's good.
There you go.
Leave it
So-
alone. Yeah.
So we'll move on, emergency dispatch, there's really this is contractual.
Yeah.
Police Department, page 51. Captain Millardo is here if anyone has any questions. Again, you'll notice overtime is up again. That's to help comply with the Police Accountability Act, for increased training. We have, when an officer's at training, then, we're gonna need more overtime for that to cover here. Should we move on, or is it?
Yeah, just,
Yeah, I don't see any.
Just one question. for Officer Millardo? I'm sorry. And I remember asking a couple of years ago too, when it comes to new officers on the force, what's the balancing act between new officers and, you know, kind of getting the work done by everyone versus overtime for the existing ones? Is there a formula that you use? Like this, would that help, for example, if you had another officer to handle some of the downshifts so that you could get the mandatory work done? Does that
Well,
help you out in the long
In
term?
this budget, prior to it arriving on your desk, I
Yes.
added a police officer, which got cut,
Okay,
okay?
got it.
There's many shifts that are unfilled
Right.
by 2 officers, and in today's world, we don't believe it's safe to have
Right.
1 officer going to calls.
Yeah.
So I asked for an officer to add, when we broke away from the state police 20 years ago, the magic number was 14 to run the department efficiently. Well, here it is, 20 years later, we still haven't made 14. There were too many shifts are going filled with just 1 officer out there. It's not safe. And now with the accountability bill that's just coming into this year, it's going to be pretty tough. We needed extra money to not only put these officers in training, but to also fill the shifts while they are in training, plus have another officer working when there are single shifts out there. So that's the reason why there's such an increase in the overtime.
Got it, okay. That's what I thought, I just wanted to hear
Yeah.
that. Okay. Thanks.
So, I'll just say, going over the budget, obviously, it's, when Tom and I were working on this, it's, there's many needs that need to be addressed in town, and our budget numbers can only go so far, and I just didn't see how we could make that work this year with an additional officer, but I'm not saying that there's not a need for that. Ready to move on? Emergency management, page 53, there is no change in this year's budget. Does anyone have anything on this?
Nope, that's good.
Page 55, building department. This is mostly due to payroll expenditures is the increase in gas and diesel. Public Works Department, page 57. Again, there's not much to it here. Highway Department, 59. There it is. There is a little, I was talking with Bob and Tom earlier, if we wanted to take 2,500 out of the gas and diesel, I think we could probably do that. We did put an increase in for that, a significant increase, so.
How about a tree removal and replacement? Is that something that we spend every year, and can we defer that, or to some degree?
That would be a question.
Can we do 1,000? Bob, can you come up here, please?
From tree removal?
Yeah, yes,
I
please.
actually asked for a lot more because
Oh.
the trees are dying by the day,
As they are.
especially our ash trees.
Oh,
So,
geez.
we'll be expending what we have this year, I hope. Get contractors back on board. I was looking for a little extra to do more, but I know the budget is tight, so that got reduced back to what it was, so.
So,
I mean,
and then
those
we'll
are,
keep it the same.
there's just so much, you see it. We're trying to manage it the best we can before it falls on the road. We've been pretty good. Eversource has done a great job working with us over the past 2 years to do a lot of that work, especially along the power lines, but we still have an awful lot of town trees that we need to, we're gonna need to handle over the next 2 to 3 years.
one thing I don't wanna change, but I know we talked about in the past, the line item for traffic signals should change this year.
God, I hope so.
When the state takes over the Main Street lights.
Yeah, as you've seen in our budget, that line item has been exhausted times two. And it's specifically because we continue to have to make repairs to the ones that hopefully will be finished this summer. And then we'll have one set of lights down at Gildersleeve that we're gonna have to maintain. And, you know, like I said before, there's some future work that has to be updated for those, but we should be able to plan for that, hopefully.
I got stormwater monitoring. You've only used 27% of the budget for last year, or this year. And you want an extra 1,000? You think you're gonna?
Yeah, because
hit 6?
yeah, so, Mike, with that said, we still have a whole bunch of testing that we need to do, and all that new, the new rules from DEEP, related to our MS4, our stormwater monitoring, have changed. And we're gonna be doing an awful lot of testing prior to the end of this fiscal year, hopefully to get that in, so that it's not such a large increase next year. I don't know what that number is gonna be, because they haven't released the new standards, and I heard they're gonna be pretty tough. So it's gonna require more than we're doing now, so I just threw a number at it to give us a little extra in case it is that much greater. And I'm hoping to do some of that early this year to offset and give us a cushion for a following year. We don't know
Okay.
what that is. It's been, it's not out yet, but that's changing. Those standards are changing. Those are all the regulations that we continually have to follow for stormwater. That goes right along with the basin cleaning. That's part of that same requirement. So,
Bob, on the road materials, you bumped it only $5,000, but with all the stuff, is that even going to come close, or should that be a higher number?
so the road materials, it's really the only place in the entire budget that we're able to fix roads. There's no capital money for road improvements. We get state aid road fund, that's where we do our chip sealing program with. We try to be very efficient with that, and use some of that money to make road repairs as well, emergency paving repairs. The $80,000 doesn't go too far. Those numbers are way up because of diesel and fuel. So this is, remember, we prepared this in January and things really took off after that. So I asked for that, hoping that that'll cushion a little bit. I mean, really, we use that for pothole replacement, replacing water main and sewer line work that we do. We use it to pave where we can cul-de-sacs replacements, but at the tonnage and what it takes to do the work, I mean, if you think about, if you were to pave a single road, say 1,200 feet, I mean, you're looking at half of that, or $60,000 of that just in asphalt to do that work. So really, this operational budget is to make those small repairs throughout the year that we do, paving around your catch basins and doing 100 feet at a time, or trench work and things like that. Your actual road reconstruction stuff is where we really need to, look at in the future.
Should that be more, I guess, what I'm asking?
It should be more. It should be a lot more, but I don't think you can absorb it.
Right.
It really should be, the equivalent to do a road. If we were to do a road, our crew is to be able to do a road. You're looking at 70,000, 60,000 of materials. You're looking at 120,000 to get it done outside.
I think we need to be, when we ask, should there be more?
Yeah, I don't want to throw anything
There's always
extra at the
gonna
budget,
be
but
the need.
Yeah, there
with
is. I mean, if you can put more there, we'll be able to do more. I don't really see that
Right.
happening. That's what I asked for, because I thought that that's what, in January, before the fuel rocketed through the roof.
So it probably covered your fuel increase, maybe.
Yeah.
Not necessarily more material.
I'll tell you, we've saved a lot. You bought me the hot box that saves our material, and we're able to keep it warm for days. We don't throw any away anymore. So that was a great investment. At the end of the day, years ago, you could have had 2.5 ton of product that was hard and couldn't be used, and boom, it went to wherever it went to recycle. Now we don't lose it all. We come back in, it's 7 in the morning, the next morning, it's hot, we go back out and use the rest of it and fill it up. We're not losing any, so that was a great purchase that you made to have zero net as far as waste.
Do you see if we can make any reduction in street signs?
So today we had a call, we have 3 missing today. We had 2 missing last week. So at the current rate that we're missing our street signs, and probably not. And that price went up too, though.
Yeah.
We just saw our first increase in the signage prices. But, yeah, I don't know what's so popular with street signs, but, jeez.
Check the dorm rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody got Molly street sign today, so.
Well, I think we know who it is.
High Street, yeah, those are gonna go. We might wanna rename a few roads up there to keep the signs. That's like twice a year. Yeah, and then just the vandalism the last, 2 weeks ago was 4 stop signs, 3 street signs. So, it adds up.
So, for this, is everyone okay with that reduction of 2,500 to gas and diesel?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we'll, okay, and then that's it, I guess, and that's, okay. All right, thank you, Bob. 61, vehicle maintenance.
So again, guys, on that, equipment repair and rental, if you can get parts, they're expensive. We're just seeing an incredible increase in just parts. Availability seems to be getting a little better, but you know, remember, that's your entire fleet, including, you know, the police department. And those vehicles are on the road 24/7, so make a lot of repairs.
Only question I have on this one would be motor vehicle oil, only because it's basically April now. You still have quite a bit of money in there this year, and I'm sure you buy it by the drum.
We
So
do, Mike.
That'll cut you into this,
We fill in May.
so you feel in May, so that'll take all that money out of that
'Cause
budget?
you have a minimum when they come to get the price.
Yep.
So you gotta get that tank as empty as you can. And I transferred over, we bought our own tank, so we don't rent anymore. We have our own fill site. We did all that to be much more compliant with DEEP and with OSHA. And we got a better price using state bid, and we take it in volume now.
Mm.
So we get the better price when they can fill the one shot, so.
But that oil's gonna carry over from July 1 to December.
Yep.
But then you're gonna buy another $5,500 worth of oil in 6 months? That's what I'm asking.
No, within that year. So my time frame has been about May, so you'll see this gone by June.
Yeah.
And then I'll need the money for next year, which the price might be more, because the state contract will change. And then I'll usually buy towards the tail end of my budget year. I still use it in the fiscal year, but it's usually
Okay.
towards the tail end.
Okay.
And you know what? And that happened because of the way we bought the new tank, and when we filled it, it was in the very beginning of the second quarter of the fiscal year. Now it lasts me to the end, so we get almost a full year out of that oil. Yep.
We send out, any of the newer trucks out that we can have, that we don't have the scan tools or anything?
No, we do. So the scan tools we purchased a few years ago, we saved $550 for them to say we scanned it. We paid for that scanner probably in the first month. Just scanning stuff on the road, so we knew we could move it. We do have a few engines that we don't have scanners for, which is more on the fire side. But no, we're able to scan most of our DPW stuff before we don't have to pay that diagnostic, and most of the time we can make the repairs right there. So we would ship the truck, pay for that, pay for the diagnostic, and then while it was there, we paid them to fix it. Now we don't pay for the diagnostic, and most of the time we fix it. So we've saved a lot with that. So there was some additional scanner in there that I put, I believe, in capital, which got cut, and that was really for the other portions of the scanner software that would apply to some of the other fire apparatus that we have. It's all based on engine make.
All right. 63, town engineer. There's no change from last fiscal year. This is pretty cut and dry, I think. Street lighting, page 65. This is utilities. Pretty 67, ground maintenance.
So 2 items for everybody to be aware of. We really have no idea where we're gonna go there. General contract work. We're not sure with the park, because a lot of things are just gonna open for the first time, probably have a full season with the splash pad. We're not sure what that's gonna be for maintenance above and beyond what we can do. And the other one is ground supplies. I will tell you right now, if you try to go buy fertilizer this week, you're not gonna fertilize. The prices are crazy. They've increased tremendously. Fertilizer is made with fuel, a lot of fuel. So, that's a moving target. We put an increase in there, but we don't know. I mean, you got big fields and stuff to maintain now, and guys are doing a great job, but you gotta keep them alive, and you gotta buy paint. We went in a different direction for line painting because those prices went through the roof. Then you couldn't get it, couldn't even get it. So, we made some good decisions. We think we're gonna be okay. We're gonna have to test it, and hopefully the paint works, and we save some money there, and we can get some more work done. Painting fields every week. Every game, every session, so which is important for those activities. And 90 acres of cutting of grass.
Move on. Yep. Town building maintenance, page 69.
So we took a beating this year, guys, in building supplies, just because of the increased cost and some of the repairs that we've been taking care of. So that line item, 61006, we looked for an increase. It's a little less than I think we're gonna need, but we're gonna have to do what we can. It's just, hopefully some of those, see, we had to make repairs, obviously, when, as you know, the cost of wood, regular timber went through the roof. So hopefully that'll come down, and has come down a little bit, and that'll soften the blow there. So I think some of the increase that we had was just because of the cost of regular wood for repairs. So hopefully we'll see that get back. Your biggest driver here is your service contracts, which is your HVAC. This budget covers many buildings. The town hall, this building, and you have an aging infrastructure of your heaters, the units that are in here, and they're failing, and they're 22, 23, the ones in the PD, or some of them are as old as the building that, really didn't get upgraded during the renovations because, they probably were in good shape then, but you get into 20 years, 22 years old with some of these heating split units and stuff that we have. First of all, they're not efficient, and second, you can't get parts for them.
When will service contracts come up?
So the service contracts pay for those. It's not the
Is that
contract
yearly?
itself. You actually pay for the furnaces and stuff in that
Yeah.
line item.
Well, is it through a mechanical contractor
It
or a
is.
controls contractor
Yeah.
or what?
Yep. Yep.
Is that done yearly, though?
We get pricing for those individual units. The contract is a done yearly contract. That's just PM that we do for all our stuff.
Yep.
But we under-service contracts, it includes equipment as well, those HVAC, those units, those air conditioning units, the split units that we have, the units that we have at the town hall, all of those units that are, we're pulling units out that are 20 years old.
That's town hall, PD, weather buildings?
Yeah, the
No, weather
PD's
buildings is this
PD's
under.
got a little bit of both. We use some of theirs in ours.
I'm
The
just-
Buck Foreman,
What buildings are we talking about that this is under?
it would be it's the town hall,
Yep,
the Buck Foreman,
Senior center?
Senior Center and Library. Yep. For those key components. Their service contracts under the library and the senior center pay for other things,
okay.
the elevator and things like that. But yeah, that's just not HVAC. I'm sorry there's multiple, there's there's a bunch of
Electrical,
service
plumbing,
contracts.
all mechanicals?
Pest control, elevator,
Fire
fire
alarms, I
alarms.
remember, yeah.
But those are kind of, our PMs and our contracts that we have, but you'll see, when we have to hit those for that $3,500 or $4,000 heating unit. First aid, right? So that's why we tried to put a little money in capital. So the numbers that I had based on what needs to be replaced, based on the investigation that I did for units such as that, was in the range of about 60,000. We tried to put a little in capital to offset this budget to get some of that work done that I know that's gonna need to be done, because those units are really kind of pieced together right now. Nate's fully aware of how we had to even change a unit out to a whole different type to get one, because the one that we tried to replace for his office was gonna take 7 months to get. So we were able to do that, but those are expensive change-outs. So.
Good with this, or?
I'm good.
Page 71, snow removal. I know we're way over this year.
Yeah, well, I'm doing my best. Thank God the snow, I feel sorry for all the departments that I called that happened yesterday or the day before, where they had taken their sanders off, and then the next thing you know, they're shut down on 91, 95, and they had that snow squall come in from the Great Lakes or whatever. But we're still not quite out of the woods, but I'm hoping that, we're in good shape. Going to do my best to get as close to an even budget this year. We went over on overtime. Obviously, we have to be out there, but I might be able to save a little bit on road materials in this existing fiscal year. We've already seen an increase in the road materials, the salt. The state contract is up. So I was looking to increase that by the same amount, but I didn't do it. So basically, if I have 84 this year and 84 in this next year's budget, it'll be less salt. I have to work it that way, but I think we're still gonna be good, because what we're doing, our program is, we're trying to reduce that so we have a little bit left to start the year in case there's a shortage or whatever it is, and we're in pretty good shape this year, so I'm good with that. The issue is overtime. We've been talking about it every year, and Tom's been doing a great job, trying to increase it a little bit each year, so it's not such a big jump, but we need to get back to what we're accustomed to. If you measure back 10 years, you might have a light year one year, but we had 3 or 4 years in the 80s. We'll be there this year. So every little bit, the 5,000 or whatever, gets us closer to that goal, where I think it's more of an actual budget over time, and then we can go from there. If there's savings for that year, then there's savings. But for the normal year, we at least can get in line with our budget and what our expenditures are.
With the road materials, could you use the rest of the budget that's left to stockpile, or you don't have enough room to accommodate that? to buy in advance?
I do have a little room, we're taking a look at that, but, you know, if that pushes us to the front door, that might not be good operationally. We wanna, you know, we have some restrictions on where the salt is related to the doors and the aquifer and the.
Yep.
So we're in really good shape there right now. I do have some liquid, you know, this includes everything. This includes the liquid that we treat with. We do that ourselves, so it's all in there. So we're looking at my numbers now. And if, you know, if it's a matter of bringing 3 trucks of salt in versus leveling the budget and not going over, then I'd rather do that for you. Try to manage the bottom line the best I can. And if I can get it even versus over, I'll keep it even. If I certainly needed it, I would do that. I think we're in pretty good shape.
All right, moving on. Page 73, Planning Department. The jump here is basically the planner going from a 35-hour-a-week position to a 40-hour-a-week position, which we feel is needed with the increase in projects with Brainerd Place and everything going on, so.
What's the plan consultant?
I was just about to ask that.
We haven't used any money yet for that this year.
I was looking at
Tom.
the same thing.
The plan consultant in the planning department, line 31002, is that, who is the plan consultant? Would that be Terry Hahn? Who would that be?
Planning consultant prior to the upcoming weeks possibly would be the amount budgeted for a plan consultant for, i.e. Jacobson, maybe the plan consultant
Yeah.
on specific projects.
Mhm.
Through Jacobson, we at times use Terry Holland on certain projects. There was some work. The thought was when we passed the POCD, this number was a higher number. Like say it was a $7,000 or $8,000 number. It was supposed to be annually $2,000 to $3,000 a year for the POCD consultant to keep that up to date. The land use administrators, I guess, didn't seem to want to do that, so that fell down. That's why you're at a $5,000 number. So it's generally when a planner or a land use person needs help. If you know, it could be like an example if somebody was the other option where that would be utilized would be as if there was no one there and you needed to engage a company. You could utilize it there. So it's mostly to be that consultant level person that the planning and land use building department need as a consultant. So that's why the monies are there.
Thank you, Tom.
So by bumping to 40 hours, would we be able to handle that ourselves without having to use that?
Well,
Or do we need all of that money?
I would recommend that we keep it. If you'll notice, it's the same amount that was budgeted in the previous fiscal year. And just given the projects that we have going on, you know, the need may arise to reach out to that consultant to assist. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend modifying that at this time. But
As a Brainerd Place has a big change in plans for something. I'm fine with that. You good?
Page 75, zoning enforcement department. We can reduce the regular payroll. I believe we had budgeted 26 hours, and I'd like to put in a 24, to go back to 24, which is what the previous fiscal year was. So for the regular payroll line, that can be changed to 34,345. I can give you what that reduction is. It's 6, $345. So that would be a $1,955 deduction. So regular payroll would be $34,345, a reduction of $1,955.
Well, and what are we up to so far in total? Are you keeping track of the total deductions?
I keeping track, but I haven't totaled it. But we haven't. I mean,
Around
and-
7,800 is, I could say. Round
Yeah.
again, I'm going through it rough.
Right.
Yeah, almost $8 grand.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I got.
So, yeah, we're
Okay.
getting in a $37 million budget.
Yeah, I know, I
We
know,
got some
it's crazy.
ground to cover. So, and that's it for ZEO here. The rest is conferences. And I will say, in regards to the planning department zoning, there's mandatory state requirements that's built into the conferences, and the meetings and dues. So, a lot of our planning and zoning members have to get additional, certification that starts, I believe it starts January 1 of 2023. So that is reflected in this budget. So you'll see that on page 77. I believe you'll see that as well. Yeah, so you'll see conferences, meetings, and dues has gone up from, to make up for that. Any questions on page 77?
Yep.
Or changes? Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, you'll notice the conferences, that's the difference here for the additional training. I believe it was a $150 increase. Inlands and wetlands, page 81. Again, the same with the conferences,
Mhm.
and that is the only change to that budget. Page 83, conservation. This just has a slight increase for board clerk. Page 85, Economic Development Commission. This was previously requested, and it is needed to have a consultant for economic development in town. So we budgeted $22,500 for a consultant this year. I think we can reduce that to $20,000 if the board is okay with that. But I do think that economic development is important, and we should fund this. Is everyone okay to move on?
We're reducing that, right?
22, yeah, by $2,500. Line 31005. $87 is capital expenditures. There's no change, just the board clerk. 89 is the health department. This is we're Chatham Health, and this is a contract which their numbers showed the population of Portland had risen, and so we had to take up a little more share of that budget this year. 91 is not used. 93 is social services. Anyone have any changes to this?
That's a question, it's not a change, but, what is the expense for Memorial Day Parade?
That is, Yeah, the Shriners, the singing,
right.
the singing trooper. There are several expenses.
I forgot that we paid people to come to be in it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And
So it increased from last year to this year by $500?
it did, yeah. Well, their expenses went up and they requested that. They requested $1,000 increase due to increased expenses. And so we put in 500 for that. I mean, you can remove it if you'd like, but, you know, they did feel the need for that.
I've also spoken to Sarah Rudder, who's working hard on that parade right now, so
Mhm.
getting it all organized.
They got the last two checks the last 2 years, correct?
Well,
I know it's in the subject.
I don't know. You could ask the board. I wouldn't. That's not something I would recommend, but you can.
What?
Sean.
No, I was thinking, as far as the fair, because they had received, the past 2 years, they didn't have the fair, they received the full 2,500. I was just looking to see if we could reduce it 500 this year. Status, I don't even know if it's still in limbo or not.
It's still in limbo.
So-
We'll give it that.
So they've received $5,000 over the last 2 years when they didn't have a fair.
Right.
And they're asking for another 2,500 for this year, where we don't know if they have a fair.
Tom, is that correct? Can you come up and answer that about the previous years? She was expected some. It's the fair has received.
I don't know when the fairs took place. When, does someone know when the fair took place?
3 years ago.
Tom, we gotta get you out more.
Can we still give them a check the last?
We gave them a
2 years?
check and they accepted it for the last 2 years.
It's, the Board of Selectmen allocated money to a fair association, they requested the money gets paid.
I know.
Their
And they
association-
accepted the check without having a fair is what we're asking. Did they cash that check?
No, if they took the money, of course they would have cashed the check, sure.
If they didn't have a fair, why would they take the money, is what I'm asking. We make
It's an
donations to the
associ-
fair, we get our money back because they didn't have the fair.
Well,
That's not true, Stephen.
No, other organizations have done that.
It's not
For,
necessarily.
for instance, Portland VFW gives $500 a year to Portland Fair. They didn't have the fair. We said, can we have our money back? They said, sure. They wrote us the check back.
The Board of Selectmen has never requested that I ask for the money back.
I
i.e. it was
didn't ask
approved
if you
by the-
requested it. I asked if they gave it back. Okay. No?
They were paid the money that was allocated within the budget based upon the request.
Okay.
So the question is, the answer is they did get the $5,000.
Yeah, so I say we shouldn't give them any more. They should use the $5,000 this year.
I have to agree with that.
Okay. I do, while we're discussing the fair, I did receive a request from the fair committee. So I guess it's topical. They did ask for American Rescue money. I don't think that's something that this board is, you know, willing to entertain, but while we're on the topic, you know, they did ask for additional funds. I don't know. So, we can do what the board pleases on this. I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'll go along with what Mike wants.
Well, I'm
You
just
know.
saying, if they've gotten $5,000 sitting in the bank of ours, they should be all right with the fair, though.
Mm.
They shouldn't need the $2,500 more.
I'm good with that.
And then we'll continue on thereafter. If they keep continuing to have the fair, we'll do the $2,500 again.
Well, is the fair even happening this year, do we
No
know?
one-
We
no one knows.
don't know. I'm still waiting to hear. They've been in talks for quite some time and weighing their options. I don't think they have the final plan.
as far as, and it is getting late.
Well, we were told at past meetings that if he didn't have it into the state by January 31st, that they didn't have the endorsement of the Portland Fair, or the State Fair Committee. That's come and gone.
That is what has said.
Yeah.
But it seems, when we read some of the literature or emails we get, that it seemed like they haven't shot him down yet, at least from what I take from the emails.
Right.
But you're right, he did say, like, the magic number was the 31st of January, but.
And that was,
Got that
Mhm.
in time.
They did get that,
31st, yeah.
okay, thank you, Sharon.
because they were supposed to tell the state where they're having it.
It's a virtual fair.
So you'd like to remove the,
I'd like to remove the
What do you think, John?
$2,500
You were involved in the
from
fair.
this
Your
year's
opinion.
budget.
I was involved in the parade too, and I'm thinking, did we have a parade during COVID?
Oh, it's true.
And did we get our money back from the parade?
I didn't think about that either.
well, if you look, we did, actual expended, we didn't have a, so one thing you guys do have to keep in mind is that even, like if you'll notice, in 2020, we didn't have a parade, but the $472 were still expended. So you would imagine they had booked, they may have deposits on things. And so in the fair's defense, like, you know, when COVID hit, they probably had expenses that
Well,
were already paid for.
that's exactly what I just said.
And,
I'm
yeah.
looking at, you really, it's a different dollar amount, but you have the same scenario
Mhm.
with allocated funds for either the parade or the fair during COVID.
Mhm.
And I don't believe either one of them happened,
Mhm.
but we didn't ask for the money back from the Memorial Day parade, so.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I want to walk down that road. But, you know, if the fair does not happen this year, then I wouldn't have a problem with saying, hold off on that money, but I don't know what's going on with the fair, if they got their paperwork in.
Well, let's not put it in the budget for in this budget, but if they do have it, we can allocate it through contingency later, at a later time.
Well, I don't know if we could allocate to the Portland Fair through contingency. Like, I don't think that
I
would
did
be-
for Juneteenth.
Can we do that, Tom? I don't know.
So I just wanted to answer your question about the $2,500. So in 10 of 18, $2,500 was allocated for the fair, was utilized to pay police private duty, which is times what occurs. If police private duty is not paid, then the amount of police private duty is charged to the Fair Association if they do not pay the fee. 6/30/19, 6/30/20, and 5/18 of 21, $2,500 was given to the fair based upon the budget, based upon the amounts allocated. They were allocated in a year where they lapse. Therefore, they were transitioned to the entity that they were requested by for use of a fair in whatever year they were to use the fair. But they were given, that was a contribution that the town of Portland made to the Fair Association. And the selectmen and the voters requested to do that. Not necessarily for a fair, but to the Fair Association to put on a fair at some point. That is how the monies were allocated. That's how they were sent. At that point, it's based upon the fair to do the appropriate thing, to utilize the money the appropriate way. If you were to remove the allocation for this year, and if they were to not pay private duty, then we would be on the hook to absorb the private duty because there's no allotment there to allocate that. So at times, they don't pay the private duty bill timely. So we would say, okay, this is allocated for you. You owe the police department this amount of money. This is how we're getting the money. And then if there's further money owed, we say, you owe this amount of money, and we get that money. But that's how that was in the years where there were not fairs. You know, it was still an organization that requested the money, where the Board of Selectmen and the voters voted to allow that. They requested the funds were given to them.
I don't think there's any issue with that. I think the issue is with, you know, if they didn't do the fair, you know, they should at least be accountable to the money that was given to them, right? That seems to be a natural recourse, right? The fair's not done. What did they spend on it? And is it a direct line between the fair and the police overtime with the police? Or are we the default to have to pay for that? So let's say the fair doesn't pay for police overtime, for police oversight.
They would,
You know,
they generally
right.
pay.
Right.
by the time, it's just whether it's.
It's like
time
they're
or-
reimbursing us because we're already paying the officers for that.
Oh, yeah, we have to pay the officers.
Right, so they're
And then
reimbursing us.
The officers bill the fair. If the fair
Right.
hadn't paid in a timely fashion in lieu of donating the funds,
Right.
we allocate the bill
Mhm.
and then request the remainder of the funds from the department.
I understand.
Yeah.
I
But I'm
understand.
saying from the town standpoint, we don't have oversight over their financials.
No, of course not.
So
But
we would not know their financial situation.
I understand that, but I think it's with that, I mean, it's also an unusual situation, right? How many fairs have been canceled? How many pandemics have we had in the last 50 years, right? So it's an unusual circumstance, so, I don't know, I guess I would just suggest if we've given them $2,500, it's probably worth asking for an accounting and whether that is seed money for the next fair that they're gonna have. Seems reasonable to me, I don't know.
We're gonna be here tomorrow. Maybe somebody can tell us
Mhm.
whether or not they're planning on having a fair, because no one's heard anything here since January.
Okay. So,
Ron, if I could say something. Ron said at the last meeting, we will have a fair this year. And they're looking at the wide, area for the fair, and if that doesn't materialize, they're going back to the, fairgrounds, the exchange place.
so I just want to say that if, with all the troubles that the fair have gone through, both, and most of it, not their fault, being the pandemic and everything, all that the work, that goes into the fair, $2,500 to them does go a long way. So I just want to caution the board that, I do understand that they have received funds from the town previously, but I don't know, I don't want, something like this to be a reason that, another nail in their coffin, so
Right,
to
why
speak.
don't we say, if we leave it in how it is, but it's determined, and we can hold the money as long as we want, like Tom said, we usually hold it to pay the police department. If they don't have the fair, then we're not giving the $2,500 to them.
I think that's more reasonable.
Right. It's there if they need it, if they don't have a fair, they don't get it. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
But we leave it in the budget.
I'm fine with that.
fine.
Okay. So we'll move on to page 95 with the Waverly Center, the Senior Center. If you notice, contractual services are up slightly, commodities are up slightly, program services are up quite a bit, obviously with, bouncing back from COVID, which is great. I know the director, Lynn, is doing a wonderful job there, and so the reduction you see is in payroll, and that's just with changes. I believe we had a change in a part-time employee or a full-time employee, who recently retired, and then, when that happens, someone else comes in at a lower rate, so that's the reduction that you would see in the payroll there. Okay. 97, municipal agent for the elderly. This is, again, up slightly with gas and diesel. So this is van driver stipend, so. Move on to page 99, the Portland Library. This is increase, commodities are up, heating is up. There's a slight increase for books and digital media. Do anyone have any comments?
Is anyone here for the library?
Jan is here.
Oh, hey, Jan. Do you mind going up to the podium for one hot second? The only question, and I was asking, just as referred to what Bob Shea was talking about earlier, and I asked what buildings were covered under the what were we talking about, the,
Service contracts.
was it?
Yeah, service contract.
Yeah, the service, well, not even that, it's just that the
Building maintenance.
building maintenance department, what buildings they covered. And now I'm looking here, I'm sorry that because you got a big bill here, is that the senior center has electricity bill, police department has electricity bill, you have an electricity bill, the town, that department has an electricity bill, but what is the town's electricity bill? Well, while you're up there, your electricity bill is going up $5,000.
Yeah.
And you're like it seems like the biggest budget for all the buildings in town. Can you just tell me
Well-
like what runs all the time like that?
Yeah, well, some of it's the HVAC, obviously, and we have a lot of lights. I mean, someone once suggested that we have the kind of lights that go off when there's no movement, but that doesn't really work in a library because people sit still and read, like in rooms. So you kind of have to keep a lot of lights. And we shut them off in rooms that aren't used, obviously, and we can do more of that. But I think Tom said a lot of this was just the amount that we have. There's a distribution part of the bill, as I understand, and that's going up, so he wanted to make sure he covered that. And he told me he was going to have to go up, I was hoping to get more money for books, but we, so I'm not too thrilled either. Yeah, it has to go to, the electric bills, but.
Yeah, I mean, that electric bill is,
Yeah,
that's
it's
a big bill for that size building. And while you're there, have you ever looked into solar at all on that building? Solar?
That would be something, I think Bob, Rick Kelsey had been asked about putting some kind of solar roofing on, but he didn't go along with the type they were talking about one time. I think it was what's Andy Bauer's committee there for the clean energy?
Clean energy.
Clean
yeah.
energy was trying to see
That's what I
about
was saying. Has he
doing
ever
that.
approached
Yeah.
you about it or anything?
Yeah,
No?
they did a while, that was quite a while ago now, but that's the only time. Someone said it really would be good for solar because we've got the nice, it's practically not a real steep pitch roof and it's out, heading south there. So it would be a good spot for solar, really. That could be something the town would look into, I don't know if is Bob still here? Does he
Bob
have
is,
any
Bob
other
is
thought
here.
about it?
Yeah, Bob's here.
I don't know if you want to ask him, but,
we're just concerned with the electric bill.
sorry. He wants you to.
Multiple things with the electric, right? The pandemic occurred, there was a shortage, there was closed down for a period of time due to a construction project, and in that year, it still went up. There was an energy efficiency review that was done, where there was a project that was engaged to save money, and then those had to be paid back over a period that is engaged, that has gone up, and those amounts have to be paid back over the 3 to 5 year period based upon the rule structure there, and there's additional usage. So we saw in the budget, we saw in there, we saw it go up from 29 to 35. So with that being said, as the market continues to go up, the natural progression was this expect an increase there in that number. If you want to try to go down in there by like $1,000 or so, you can try to do it, but there's the bill plus the loan payback to Eversource based upon the agreement that was approved by everyone. And, it should save money, and it likely is saving, but there's additional usage based upon the additional usage of the library with the different quotes, as well as there is in the system, there is this scheme within the heating and fueling structure that when you're in the summertime, you gotta run the heat, and in the wintertime, you gotta run the air conditioning, and it becomes this very expensive component to administer, and that's with all the control modules in place. This is with the energy efficiency programs entered in. This is with the upgraded to all the AC units and the control towers. These are all things that are there. So, that is why we're seeing the increase in this dollar value. I think you're seeing it because of the additional activity and work, and then also, I think there was energy efficiencies done and nice, great improvements, and some of those still need to get paid back in the short haul, and then you'll see the continual savings on that as the amount pays off.
Yeah, I'd forgotten they had the study done a while ago, and they did have the lights were improved too. There was a grant that Bob took care of a lot of that. There was
all of the LEDs or whatever, those are all upgraded, so that's good.
Yeah. I didn't know you had a payback program through Eversource in there. I just
Yeah,
thought it was a
honestly,
utility bill.
That's honestly
That
gone
makes
from
more sense.
my
More
purview
sense.
too, so, yeah, thanks, yeah. Anything else while I'm up here? Anyone? Maybe
I have
you.
one thing for you. I like that, the slight increase for the videos and digital media, because I know everything's going more online and digital. For the books, could that come down a little bit?
It could, you know, the books include ebooks, they actually do include that. The two lines kind of separated out, the books, and then the digital media includes the e-audio books. But it's a little, but the books are the e-books. We decided just somehow keep these separate to sort of conceptually. So really, it's not much of an increase, because unfortunately, the digital media is really more expensive, which you wouldn't think it is. And it isn't for you or I to go buy an ebook, but for a library to buy it. The publishers are not happy. They think we're stealing their books or something. And, you know, I'm being kind of snide, but there's actually a whole thing going on. The state has a bill up to try to help the publishers understand.
Well, if one of us buys the ebook, most likely one or two people read it. If you do, the whole town has access to it.
But that's the same with other books. I mean, they can't all read it at once.
Yeah,
It's the
right.
same thing, you know. They can only have 10 times a
Yeah.
year, so I don't know. I can see them charging a little more, but not that much. Only like 4 times more. Having them expire. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of cushion anywhere. The periodicals, there is a renewal coming up, and some of those have been, they're just not publishing some of them anymore. So we thought we could come down more on that, but then the newspapers went up astronomically. We've actually just spent another 500 or so from what was on here, just been encumbered for the Hartford Current for like part of a year. It's 500. It's just outrageous. So we could probably nick, you know, the periodicals and something like that, but
Okay.
I wouldn't, I can't really say we could do a whole big amount of it because of that other part of it there. So.
What would you be comfortable with? I mean, everyone's given a little bit. I'm not asking for,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, if we could probably find 1,000 or so. I mean, if you took a bit off of the periodicals and maybe the program services. We do use that. It's kind of nice toward the end of the year when there's something. We're trying to collaborate with some other departments, so it's nice not to pull that down either. You know, our friends, luckily the Friends of the Library give us thousands of dollars, and we have, you know, the children's, the summer programs and all that.
Yep.
But we do use that for materials and different things that really are in some programs at the end of the year.
Well, would it be fair if we took 500 off books and 500 off periodicals? So it was 1,000 combined?
Can do that.
So you're proposing, say that again.
Reducing the books from 48.5 to 48, and periodicals from 6,500 to 6.
Is everyone okay with that?
It's, you know, I realize we have to do something.
Yeah.
Look it up. All right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
So, move on to 101, employee fringe benefits. This is pretty,
It's all contracts.
Yeah.
So we can't.
pretty much.
So on collective bargaining, is that contracted in there because of the renewals of several contracts?
What line item is that?
The bottom.
Bottom 37,029, it went from 6 to 12.
Tom, could you answer that question on?
I'm assuming it's new contracts coming up, but I don't know.
Okay. Say that again, Tom, can you come up and say that, please, in the microphone? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
On the left side of the page there, every other year is an OPEB valuation. So it's about a $7,000 hit, so that's why it went up.
So it's every other year? So it would have been, we would have had like a 2019, 21, like,
Yeah, so it's, so next year is 23, so we had it in 21.
yeah. Got it. So from, so we had 7, 6, and 12.
Yeah, so it's every year we flip-flop like this, it's, the budget was, is
So what was
6,
12
so we
before?
put 6. So every other year we add 6, we take off 6, we add 6, we take off 6.
Okay,
So this year is because it's on, we add 6.
got it. But we didn't do that before, though?
Every year you do it, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off.
I just didn't see it on the year before.
You
That's all I was
spend,
asking.
you don't necessarily spend it all, but it's in the budget.
But you had a budget for 12, but you actually spent only 7.
Cause like this year, right now, we've only spent $750.
Right, okay. That's what I mentioned, okay.
Yep.
So that's there for other, like if we have to engage for the actuaries to do something,
Mhm.
the lawyers to do some engagement, that's what those funds are there for.
Okay.
I know in this year's budget, we do have to do some work with police, pension contract.
Mhm.
So there's a possibility that there'll be work done purchasing that. to do that. But that's what that is every other, so usually that's a 6,000 number or it's a 12,000 number based on the year.
The only other comment too is if we can just have everyone not be sick, we could save $100 grand. So if we could put that out to everybody.
Yeah, that's the payment that's their sick pay of what they're, when they aren't sick.
No, I understand.
So we.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, so they have to be sick, and then you don't have to pay them.
There you go.
So.
Thank you.
Tom, I got one question while you're up there.
Say that to people.
For the fire department contributions, it's been going down for 3 years. Why did it go up significantly?
So, so in this val, we had, we changed the discount rate from 6% to 5.5%. Discount rate would be the amount of investment return. We have an allocation that was a high cash profile in our investment allocation, and we're working toward adjusting that this year. But the 5.5 is a more realistic value.
Okay.
But what we need to do is we need to improve our investment strategy plan to have it more in line with that. So right now it was heavy, more cash driven. So when I first got here, it was a very liquid investment. So we've had we've invested it and it's grown and it continues to grow. But the investment return, because of the cash position, still, you can't really get to the 6.5% or the 6%. And so it was going to create an actuarial issue. So I spoke with the actuaries and we went and lowered it for this cycle. And now we're going to I'm working with my investment team to adjust the investment strategy going forward. The plan, the actual, what we're doing is we want to get our plan more in line with what we're doing. So we're doing what we are investing in the strategy. We want the plan to show that, which will get it more in line with the 5.5 return. So when you do that, that creates, when you change the investment strategy, the actual contribution has to go up. We'll probably, on the town side, we'll probably have that, on the town and police will probably work in the future, not in this budget, but in the subsequent budget, to get our 7.5% return down lower. And that will in turn increase the town and the police plans in time. Because it's very, very hard to return it's hard to return a 7.5%. Fiscal 21, yeah, we did excellent. Return very, very strong. So that wasn't a year to need to do it that year, but met with investment advisors, met with the actuaries. Would like to see that come down. So we're gonna work toward that goal, with our investment strategy in the subsequent budgets. So this year, we had to hit the goal for the volunteer plan.
Okay.
So you see that, and then subsequent years, you may see that as well for the town and the police. But, in this year, we're actually reaping, in this eval, we're actually reaping the benefit of the power of the strong investment strategy.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Tom. So are we okay to move on?
Yeah.
Risk management, page 103. This is Kerma. This is our insurance. As Tom mentioned, there are some added expenses this year. So,
Ryan, after risk management, I was just wondering if you can make a motion to adjourn for tonight. Not only just us, as everyone else here, the workers and everything, we call it a night. We gotta come back tomorrow anyways, right?
yeah, I was just trying to get through, I was going to do other special revenue funds after, so, yes, that's what I was thinking, but.
When you
yeah.
get out of that, okay.
So we're just.
So you wanna get to page 109 or
Yeah,
110?
so, I mean, actually, though, if we could do, because we have our Parks and Rec director and our Youth Services director here tonight, while they're here, I think it would, they've been here for a couple, we should do it while they're here.
Right.
Let's do it. So, but I think we can, move quickly through this, and I do think we can adjourn after that, if that's okay. So Kerma's up, debt service, as Tom mentioned, went down. This is all, there's nothing to that, but it did go down. And we took that money that we saved and we put it towards capital. That was the plan, and that's why capital is up this year. Now, page 107, interfund transfers. This is where you'll see the transfers from the general fund to animal control, youth services, building maintenance, resource recovery, transfer out other parks and rec, open space, capital, non-recurring, and then capital Board of Ed. And so you'll notice here that's why you see a 37.01% increase. That is due, if you notice, you'll see an increase in the transfer out to youth services. So more money, roughly $17,000 additional is going to youth services from the general fund this year. And resource recovery, now you all are aware of the increase in waste disposal and also the benefits change that we had due to a life change. And Parks and Rec is an increase of about 50,000 to the general fund, transferring to Parks and Rec from the general fund, as well as the largest expense is the capital non-recurring, which is 322,000 in capital, up from $56,000. Because remember, last year we did the capital lease, so that's how we did do capital improvements last year. So that's what that is. Page 109, that's town contingency, that's flat, that is what it is. So now we can, if you want, we can do, I would recommend that we do Parks and Rec and Youth Services. Youth Services is first, and then we can adjourn for the evening and start tomorrow with animal control. So we'll do that.
Sounds good.
Okay?
So 125.
What's that?
125 youth
125.
services.
So 125
Jesse did it.
youth services. So our director, Jesse Ravicki, is here. Thank you for coming tonight, Jesse. And does anyone have any questions on this? So as you'll see, you see both the revenue and the expenses in these funds. So, and as Tom said, one difference is last year there was $40,000 in fund balance that was used to balance the budget. So this year, rather than take the full $40,000 hit, we wanted to split that up, so we used $20,000 of fund balance, so we can kind of wean ourselves off that, so we can get back to, proper numbers. But that's really, is what it is. Does anyone have any questions for Jesse or? You will notice the revenue is down from previous years for program fees. I believe that's Kids Blast, right, Tom? Which moved to Parks and Rec. So if you notice, a few years ago in fiscal year 2020, the revenue was significantly higher, but that program, Kids Blast, moved to Parks and Rec. So both the revenue and expenses went down in these services because of that. And I'll just point out, there is a change to temporary payroll. That is, the employee that is currently working can be paid through the grant, through our shelter diversion grant as a consultant. So that's more of an accounting change than no, but that they can be paid through that, so. Should we move on, or?
I don't have any questions.
see
on that.
anything.
Tom, do you have something to say?
Tom was ready for us to ask a question.
I didn't want to say, but,
the salary position, the person we had the person as a temporary person. What the director will have to do is try to do it without a temporary person. If that becomes a challenge, we'll have to address that during the year. And possibly the individual that's working as a temporary payroll person may be able to come back as a contractor through the early childhood incentive program, which then it would be able to be charged to some of his grant activity that he has in other funds. But that's what we'd hope if that could occur. That'd be beneficial. So then we would have additional funds to you have different expenditures that charge of the grant, because the grant only covers a portion of the director's salary and then a portion of the person that's a consultant and or the employee. So without the employee, it becomes a little tricky.
Bless you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom.
That explains that. Thank you. All right. I think we can move on.
Parks and Rec, 133.
Yep, page 132, Parks and Recreation.
So I had a question. So since you guys took over that Summer Blast program or whatever, Kids Blast, you guys are guesstimating about 99,000 is what you're thinking? Because my only question is do you think that's optimistic, pessimistic, or not? Because it looks like parents are dying to bring their kids back to stuff, so maybe you might get more, hopefully. But what's your gut?
So as of right now, and I know Tom has mentioned it multiple times, we're in quite quite a transitional year here with the pandemic. You know, we're hoping to see our participation across the board return to what normal numbers were. So that's with the Kids Blast program, all of our youth athletic programs, adult athletic programs, as well as the Summer Quest summer camp program. So I think it is a bit optimistic that we're going to get up to that point, but if our numbers do trend positively, you know, to what they were 2.5, 3 years ago, I think that's a reasonable estimate.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Nate. So, you want to talk about the bathrooms at the new park?
Yeah, sooner than later, we'll have them up and running. We're going to have them ready to go for youth soccer and baseball season.
Looking forward to it. I know.
We're working
Thank
on
you.
putting a crew together.
Yeah.
And we
And I am
have
too.
one who's definitely
If
interested
anybody's
so
looking
far.
for a seasonal job in the audience, I got. Oh, boy.
That felt good.
Does anyone have any questions for Nate while he's here about the budget?
My only comment, it's nice to see the kids coming back. It's nice to see the programs growing back again.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
town needs that.
It's fantastic.
So,
Just a slow increase.
It's a
in our
sign of
numbers
normalcy
is
again. We all
very
need that
exciting.
really badly.
I'd like to see all the selectmen at the 5K race in October this year.
Training for it already.
I'm at the 5K race every year. I take the pictures.
Well played, Ralph.
Hey, no publicity without Ralph, that we need him there.
Absolutely.
The challenge we face with all of it, though, and obviously we talk about numbers all the time, and you just don't know what the long-term effect, there was this drop-off because, in all likelihood, COVID, and you just don't know if this is a permanent drop or what. It's kind of scary trying to plan.
Oh, and it's impacted everything. It's impacted the requirement for equipment and supply purchases. It's impacted the staff we have actually applying to work for any of the youth positions, summer camp as well as Kids Blast. So it's affecting everything our department does throughout the whole budget. You know, that's revenue and expenses. So optimistic is definitely a word that goes towards this budget year, and you know, hopefully we're able to make everything we're expecting and just get back on a normal standard of what our budget year should look like.
It's amazing when you think that there are kids out there that have had, very young ones who don't even know what a lot of these programs are because they've never got to experience them for the last couple of years. I hope they all come.
We'll do our best. Anything else?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you. So, with that, we will, before we adjourn for the evening, I'll just say, tomorrow we have a special meeting at 6:45, and then we will resume, with animal control tomorrow, and we'll go through the remaining special funds, and then including capital. So tomorrow we'll discuss capital, and that should be it. So
For those trying to keep track, I believe it's 11,255.
that's what I got too.
All right.
All right. We all have the same numbers.
right.
So 2.5 hours, and we got 11,255. So now you see, it's tough.
Well, we knew it was lean, but like
Yeah.
I said, every penny counts, right?
No, every penny certainly counts.
Yep.
So, all right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Recording stopped.